The first notes drifted through the hospital corridor like a whisper from another lifetime, soft, haunting, achingly familiar. Victoria Chen's hand froze on the conference room door handle, her breath catching in her throat. That melody. God, that melody. She hadn't heard it in 15 years, but every note was seared into her memory like a brand she'd never been able to remove. Her assistant was still talking about quarterly projections, but Victoria couldn't hear her anymore. All she could hear was the piano, playing a song that shouldn't exist, a song only one person in the world had ever known. A song that died with him, or so she'd thought. She turned sharply, her Louboutins clicking against the tile as she followed the sound down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past the waiting rooms filled with worried families, until she reached the children's wing. There, in the small recreation room with its cheerful murals and worn furniture, sat a man at an old upright piano. His shoulders were hunched with exhaustion, his t-shirt wrinkled, his jeans faded. But his fingers moved across the keys with a grace that spoke of countless hours of practice, of love poured into every measure. And beside him, in a wheelchair, sat a little girl of maybe 7, bald from chemotherapy, her face tilted up toward him with pure adoration. She was humming along, though she couldn't possibly know the words that Victoria remembered so clearly. Even when the world turns dark, I'll be your light, I'll be your spark. Marcus didn't notice the elegant woman in the designer suit standing in the doorway. He was focused entirely on his daughter Lily, watching the way music brought color back to her pale cheeks, the way it made her smile despite the IV port in her thin arm. This piano, this song, it was the only thing that seemed to ease her pain anymore, the only thing that made her forget, just for a moment, that she was fighting for her life. Where did you learn that song? Victoria's voice cut through the final notes, sharp and desperate. Marcus's hands stilled on the keys. He looked up, startled, taking in the woman before him, immaculately dressed, her dark hair swept into a perfect chignon, her face carefully composed except for her eyes. Those eyes held something raw and broken. He glanced at Lily, protective instinct kicking in. I'm sorry, we didn't mean to disturb anyone. I know visitors aren't supposed to use the piano, but Lily loves music, and… Where did you learn it? Victoria repeated, stepping into the room. Her hands were trembling now, and she clasped them together to hide it. That melody. Who taught you? Marcus frowned, confused by the intensity in her voice. No one taught me. I wrote it. Years ago, when I was in college. I was studying music composition at Berkeley before. He stopped, his jaw tightening. Before life got complicated. You couldn't have written it. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper now. She moved closer, and in the fluorescent light, Marcus could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe late 30s. Beautiful, in the way that came from careful maintenance and good genes, but there was a deep sadness in her eyes that no amount of expensive makeup could conceal. That song was written by someone I knew. Someone who died 15 years ago. The room fell silent except for the quiet beep of Lily's portable monitor. The little girl looked between the two adults, sensing the strange tension crackling in the air. Marcus stood slowly, positioning himself between Victoria and his daughter. I don't know what you think you heard, but I wrote that melody when I was 22. It was for someone he stopped, the memory still painful after all these years. Someone I loved. Her name was Victoria. She was pre-law, brilliant, beautiful. We were going to change the world together. He laughed bitterly. But her family had other plans. They didn't think a broke music student was good enough for their daughter. She went to Harvard Law. I got a letter saying she'd met someone else, someone suitable. And I never saw her again. Victoria's carefully constructed composure shattered. A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half gasp. Marcus Sullivan. He stared at her, really looked at her this time. And beneath the polish, beneath the years and the expensive grooming, he saw her. The girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder in the library. The girl who believed his music could change the world. The girl who broke his heart so completely that he'd never finished his degree, never pursued his dreams, never quite put himself back together. Vicky. The nickname fell from his lips like a prayer. But they said you died. There was an accident, a car crash after graduation. Your mother told me when I called, told me to stop bothering your family, that you were gone and, his voice cracked. I mourned you. For years, I mourned you. And I mourned you, Victoria whispered. She moved to the nearest chair and sank into it, her legs no longer able to hold her. 2 months after I sent that letter, the letter my parents forced me to write, I got the news that you died. Motorcycle accident, they said. There was even an obituary. I saw it. She pressed her hands to her face. I wanted to die too. But I was already pregnant. The world tilted sideways for Marcus. Pregnant. With your child. Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face now, past caring about her mascara or her reputation or the little girl watching them with wide eyes. A son. I named him Alexander Marcus Chen. I kept the Marcus, even though my parents fought me on it. It was the only piece of you I had left. Daddy. Lily's small voice broke through. Why is the fancy lady crying? Marcus couldn't answer. He was staring at Victoria, his mind reeling. I have a son. We have a son. He's 14 now. Brilliant, like you. He plays piano, like you. Victoria laughed through her tears. I became a lawyer like they wanted, built a career, eventually took over my father's company. Chen International, maybe you've heard of it. I have everything they ever wanted for me. And I've been empty inside for 15 years. Why? Marcus demanded, anger finally breaking through his shock. Why would they do that? Why would they lie? Control. Money. Status. Victoria's voice turned hard. When they found out I was pregnant, they gave me an ultimatum. Terminate the pregnancy and never speak your name again, or they'd destroy you. Really destroy you. Your family's small business, your mother's medical practice, your sister's scholarship, they had the power to take it all away. And they would have. So you let me think you were dead. So I protected you the only way I knew how. I was 22 years old, terrified, and pregnant. I sent that letter, I cut all contact, and I let you go on with your life. I never knew they'd told you I was dead. I swear, Marcus, I never knew that. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so familiar that it hurt. But they told me you died 2 months later, and I believed them. Why wouldn't I? They'd already proven they'd do anything to keep us apart. Marcus sat back down at the piano, his hands resting on the keys but not playing. His whole world had just been rewritten. I never got on with my life, he said quietly. I dropped out of Berkeley. Moved back home. Eventually, I met Lily's mom, Sarah. She was kind, patient. She never asked why I couldn't quite love her the way she deserved. We got married, had Lily, and I thought maybe I could build something good, even if it wasn't what I'd dreamed. He looked at his daughter, his voice breaking. Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. And now Lily is sick too, Victoria finished softly. She looked at the little girl, really seeing her for the first time. What does she have? Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She needs a bone marrow transplant, but we haven't found a match. I'm not compatible, and Sarah was an only child. We're running out of time. He picked up Lily's small hand. I play for her every day. It's the only thing that helps. And that song, your song, it's her favorite. She calls it the Hope Song. Victoria stood, moved closer. She knelt down beside Lily's wheelchair, meeting the child's eyes. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Victoria. You're pretty, Lily said. Are you a princess? You dress like a princess. No, baby. I'm just a lady who knew your daddy a long time ago. Victoria looked up at Marcus. I want to help. I have resources, the best doctors, access to international donor registries. I don't need your charity, Marcus said stiffly. It's not charity, you stubborn man. It's, Victoria's voice rose, then broke. Please let me do this. I lost 15 years with you. I missed every moment of my son's life thinking his father was dead. Don't let me lose the chance to do something that matters. Don't let pride. Marcus stood abruptly. You think this is about pride? My daughter is dying, Victoria. Every day I watch her get weaker. Every night I lie awake terrified that the next morning I'll go to her room and she'll be gone. Do you know what that's like? To be completely powerless to save your own child. Yes, Victoria said simply. Because I've spent 14 years powerless to give my son his father. Powerless to tell him the truth about where he came from. Powerless to fix what my family destroyed. She stood, facing Marcus. So let me have this. Let me use everything they forced on me, the money, the power, the connections, for something good. Let me help save your daughter. Our daughter's half-sister. The words hung in the air. Our daughter's half-sister. The reality of their fractured, impossible family finally taking shape. Marcus's shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him. Okay, he whispered. Okay. Victoria made the calls that same night. Within 48 hours, Lily had been transferred to the best pediatric oncology unit in the country. Within a week, they'd expanded the donor search internationally. And on a Tuesday morning 2 weeks later, Victoria walked into Lily's hospital room with news. "We found a match," she said, and Marcus burst into tears. The match was Alexander, their son. When Victoria finally told him the truth, all of it, he'd insisted on being tested immediately. And somehow, miraculously, he was compatible. Marcus met his son for the first time in the hospital cafeteria. Alexander was tall for 14, with Marcus's dark hair and Victoria's sharp eyes. He was nervous, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, but when he saw Marcus, something shifted in his face. "You look like the pictures," Alexander said. "The old ones, from college. Mom kept them hidden, but I found them when I was 10. Marcus couldn't speak. He just pulled the boy, his boy, into his arms and held on. The transplant was successful. Lily's body accepted the marrow, and slowly, painfully slowly, she began to recover. Marcus spent his days at the hospital, splitting time between his two children, watching them become family. Alexander read to Lily, taught her chess, made her laugh. And Lily adored her big brother with the fierce devotion only a little sister could have. Victoria came every day after work, still dressed in her power suits, still running her empire. But she'd sit with them in the hospital room, and slowly, tentatively, she and Marcus began to talk. Really talk. About the years lost, the lies told, the grief they'd both carried. "I'm so angry," Marcus admitted one night, after the kids were asleep. They were in the family lounge, drinking terrible vending machine coffee. "At your parents. At the universe. At fate. We lost so much time." "I know." Victoria's voice was thick. "But we can't get it back. We can only go forward. Can we, though?" Marcus looked at her. "Can we really move past this?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn piece of paper, sheet music, yellow with age. "I kept this. The original copy you gave me. The lyrics you wrote, the melody you composed. Even when the world turns dark, I'll be your light, I'll be your spark." She looked up at him. "You kept that promise, Marcus. Through everything, losing me, Sarah's death, Lily's illness, you kept being the light. For her, for Alexander, even for me, though you didn't know it. So yes, I think we can move forward. Not because it's easy, but because that's what we do. That's who you taught me to be." 6 months later, Lily was declared in remission. The family gathered at Victoria's house, a massive estate that had belonged to her parents, though they'd both passed away years before, taking their secrets and their shame to their graves. Marcus stood at the grand piano in the living room, with Lily on one side and Alexander on the other. Victoria sat nearby, watching her fractured, impossible, miraculous family come together. "Play our song, Daddy," Lily said. So he did. And this time, when he reached the chorus, 3 voices joined his. "Even when the world turns dark, I'll be your light, I'll be your spark. Even when hope seems far away, I'll find you in the break of day." It wasn't perfect. Alexander was off-key, and Lily forgot some of the words. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was enough. After the kids ran off to play in the garden, Victoria sat beside Marcus on the piano bench, their shoulders touching the way they used to in that college library so many years ago. "I wrote you a new verse," Marcus said quietly. "Want to hear it?" Victoria nodded, not trusting her voice. His fingers found the keys, and he began to play. The melody was the same but richer now, deepened by years and loss and love that had somehow survived everything thrown at it. "We lost the years, we can't go back, but every day's a brand new track. The past is gone, the pain runs deep, but love's a promise we still keep." When he finished, Victoria took his hand. Not as a declaration, not as a promise of romance reborn, there was too much healing left to do for that. But as a beginning, as a hope, as a melody that had finally found its way home. "Thank you," she whispered. "For keeping that promise. For being the light." Marcus squeezed her hand, watching their children play together in the fading sunlight. "Always," he said. "Even when the world turns dark." And somewhere, in the space between notes and heartbeats, between past and future, their song played on.